An author who has sold over 15 million books and written extensively on giants is Brad Steiger.
Mass graves of giants were opened. Some of the men 8 feet tall, some of the women 7 feet tall, some records of men 10 feet tall, and extremely large skulls. And extraordinarily, some of these skulls had horns, some had extra rows of teeth, some had other what we would call anomalies, but they were extraordinarily large skulls and extraordinarily large people.
A maverick archaeologist who has long been fascinated by legends of American giants is David Hatcher Childress.
A number of mounds in the Midwest in America were excavated starting in around 1850. And in many cases, they would find skeletons of people who were in excess of 7 feet tall. And in many cases, they had double rows of teeth, as well as, in some cases, 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot.
The one that was found in Bridal Veil Falls, California by a group of miners, first they found this wall with very intricate hieroglyphics. They assumed that they were finding gold behind the wall. They broke it down and they found this woman holding a child covered with fur and a strange kind of dust. The same tall female mummified remains have been found in Texas. They have been found in Death Valley. They have been found in other parts of California.
These old photographs and newspaper clippings are all that survive of these mysterious giants. Winner of the Newsmaker of the Year award, journalist Jim Mars has a special interest in speculative science.
Archaeology at that time was in a heyday. There was everybody that had a shovel was out trying to find something. But what's interesting is that the finding of these giant mummified bodies and giant fossils and bones, really you can't pin to any particular location. They were finding them in Greece, they were finding them in Italy, they were finding them in the Middle East, they were finding them in America. And even if you write off a few of those as perhaps a hoax or a misinterpretation of something else, you're still left with a tremendous amount of evidence to show that there were these giant beings at some point walking the earth.
In 1912, ranchers started coming to this isolated cave near Lovelock, Nevada, to dig out bat guano for fertilizer. Inside, a surprise was waiting for them.
They began excavating the 10 to 15 feet of guano that was here in this cave. They started discovering some unusual artifacts. They found duck decoys and baskets, other things for hunting and fishing in the nearby lake that's now drying up. But then they made some very unusual discoveries, and those were of red-haired giants that were mummified. These giants were 6.5 to 7 feet tall. In many cases, they were mummified, wrapped up like Egyptian mummies, and they had long red hair going down to their shoulders. The ranchers couldn't explain it. It was the strangest thing they'd ever seen. But the Paiute Indians who lived around here knew all about it. In fact, back in 1883, Sarah Winnemucca, a Paiute Indian princess, had written a book called Life Among the Paiutes. In that book, she talked all about the giant, red-haired people who used to live around this lake and live in this cave. She claimed they were cannibals.
That tribe would eat the dead. They would make war on my people. My people went to work and gathered wood to fill up the mouth of the cave. At last my people set it on fire and called out to them, "Give up or you will die." But no answer came.
Now, one of the great mysteries of the West is what happened to these giants? There was nearly 60 skeletons brought out of this cave, but today they're nowhere to be found. Is it that there is some kind of archaeological cover-up that has occurred here? Something that concerns giants?
Perhaps the entire story may be a rural legend, or like tons of buffalo bones, the remains may have been burned and used with the bat guano as fertilizer. Whatever the explanation, proof that there were giants here has disappeared. Yet at the same time, tantalizing clues to their existence can be found all over the world. In South America, there are giant figures carved into rock so huge that at ground level it's hard to tell what they depict. Though from the sky, that becomes dramatically clear. This one in Chile, known as Cerro Unitas, at over 300 feet high, is believed to be the largest representation of a human-like figure in the world. Who carved it and why remains a mystery. Half a world away, in the United Kingdom, other giant figures stare up into the sky. The Long Man of Wilmington, 280 feet from head to toe. It emerges from the English hillside like a giant god from another era. These massive standing stones, the largest 30 feet tall and weighing 50 tons, were erected here thousands of years ago. The early Britons called the stone circle the Giant's Dance and believed giants had built it. The spiral-shaped Gilgal Rephaim is situated in the Golan Heights, 50 miles from Damascus. Constructed from an estimated 40,000 tons of loose rocks, it is remarkably reminiscent of Stonehenge. Both have been dated at around 5,000 years old and have similar megalithic stones. And like Stonehenge, Gilgal is also said to be associated with giants. Only in this case, there's biblical text which seems to support the claim. Israeli archaeologist Daniel Herman is investigating the newly opened grave.
This is a tomb of someone, obviously a very powerful man. Look at the size of the stone slabs used. This must have taken an enormous amount of time and effort to construct. When the Israelites came here and wrote their Bible, it was already here. They saw it. So they have documented the identification of the site by saying that this region was ruled by Og, king of the Bashan. Og is described in the book of Deuteronomy as, and I quote, "For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the Rephaim." Rephaim is Hebrew word for giants.
The surface of our planet is strewn with gigantic constructions dating back thousands of years. They're in the deserts, on the plains, under the oceans, high on the mountains, like those in South America.
I think the world looked like the cities we see in Machu Picchu, Tiahuanaco, Sacsayhuaman. I think it was a world peopled by giants who structured their buildings out of massive building blocks, 500-ton, 250-ton blocks.
Massive ruins, the scale of which stagger the imagination, are found throughout Central and South America. Even a skeptic might be tempted to ask, who could have built these architectural wonders, if not a race of giants? People of the Mediterranean island of Malta have an ancient belief that their island was known as the last stronghold of the giants of Europe. In Lebanon, 44 miles from Beirut, are the imposing ruins of Baalbek. There is mention of this place in the Old Testament's Book of Kings.
Baalbek in particular is a very good example. That has the trilithon. Those are the largest stones in the world ever used for construction. They're so large we don't even know their actual weight. Those stones were somehow quarried, moved 5 miles, lifted 25, 30 feet in the air, and placed together so closely that you can't fit a razor blade or a piece of paper in between them. We have no idea how they did it. We don't have a crane in the world that can lift weights anywhere near what those things are.
No one knows for sure, but according to Arab tradition, the earliest temples were built here after the Great Flood by a tribe of giants for the biblical king Nimrod. But what exactly do we mean by the word giant? Bloodthirsty monsters like the one-eyed Cyclops of Homer's Odyssey? Or the fee-fi-fo-fum ogres of children's fairy tales? Or could it also include peaceable giants, living as you and I do, walking the streets of our cities in the full light of day?
There are really two kinds of people who could be considered giants. There are giants who are genetically programmed to be tall, people who are normal, but their genes mean that their genes lead them to be very, very tall. And then there are people who suffer from some kind of a disorder, the most common of which, or at least the most well-known of which, is acromegaly, which is a disease in which there is too much growth hormone produced. And acromegaly has a lot of effects on the body. It not only leads to excessively tall people, but it also leads to potential problems with the skeleton and potential problems with some of the organs inside. Ryan is a healthy, well-proportioned, 7-foot-tall, normal young man. I just wish I were as tall as he was.
But what makes a person unusually tall? Is it a family trait, nutrition, or something else? Are tall people just ordinary people of exceptional height? Certainly some tall people are giants in their profession, and if that happens to be basketball, they may be millionaires too. Genuine giants didn't always do so well. Here's Jack the Giant Killer presenting his latest capture to the king. Towards the end of the 19th century, this 9-footer was given to the Russian Tsar as a gift. For some of the vertically unchallenged, it was possible to make a modest living by displaying themselves in public. From there, it wasn't very far to the Carnival Freak Show, which wasn't complete without one or more giants. Even after death, they could still draw a crowd. Anna Swan and her husband Martin, both 7.5 feet tall, went on tour as the world's tallest married couple. It probably took 2 storks to deliver their 24-pound newborn. Which brings us back to the question, where do they come from? Is it possible that in the dim and distant past, they can trace their ancestry to a race of giants? The Weizmann Institute's award-winning scientist, Dr. Marvin Antelman, believes he has the answer.
If we all have genetic material from the first man, then it is not surprising to find here and there that you would have a giant existing among us today, because there would be a recessive gene that would produce such a person.
The Watusi tribe, for instance, are very large. The median height for most of their males is close to about 7 feet. They're extremely tall.
In the Book of Numbers, we are told that after wandering in the desert with his people, Moses sent out scouts to find a place where they could settle. The scouts went north to Hebron. On their return, they reported, "All the people we saw there are men of gigantic size. We felt no bigger than grasshoppers, and that is how we looked to them." The tribes continued northeast to Mount Seir, known today as Petra in Jordan. But that too, as mentioned in the Bible, had been settled by giants. Wherever they looked, it seemed they found the remnants of giants.